Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. We're really excited to get started today. My name is Andy Oshroff, and I'm the director of USM's Career and Employment Hub. And I'm going to be moderating this morning for our wonderful and esteemed panel. The way we've kind of structured this session is we have three different programs that we're going to be talking about. And so each one of those programs is going to present for 10, 15, 20 minutes or so, just about what their program is, a little bit of the history of those, how to get involved. And then we'll have a panel discussion amongst the folks here about kind of their thoughts on getting these types of partnerships up and running. So I'm gonna have the panelists introduce themselves. Is that working down there?
That should be live. How's that? Great.
Okay.
Well, good morning. My name is Lindsay Freeman, and I'm the Internship Program Manager at the USM Career and Employment Hub, headed up by Andy, and here representing the EQUIP program in partnership with the Maine State Chamber and Educate Maine.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Joan Dolan, and I'm the Director of Apprenticeship and Strategic Partnerships for the Maine Department of Labor. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what apprenticeship is today and how people can get involved.
Good morning. My name is Patrick Woodcock. I'm the president of the Maine State Chamber of Commerce, which is the largest statewide business organization in the state. So pleased to have the invitation. I'll also do a shout out to one of our sister organizations, Corey King with the Brunswick Regional Chamber.
Go, Corey. Good morning. My name is Fatuma Hussein. I really apologize for being late. We have a federal audit going on right now, and I'm like, why did I even sign up for this? Anyway, I am the executive director of the Immigrant Resource Center of Maine, and I'm here today representing the Lewiston Urban Working Communities Challenge, and we'll talk more about that.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm so excited to dive into these different programs. And I think first we're going to be talking about the EQUIP program. So we have some slides for that one. And yeah, I think I'll kick it over to you, Lindsay, to get started once the slides pop up there.
Perfect. Yeah, I can get started while the slides are loading. So I'm really pleased to be here with you all this morning to introduce the EQUIP program focused on internship access for first-generation students. So this program is a partnership with Educate Maine and the Maine State Chamber. And the focus on internships really came out of a specific challenge, which is that internships are absolutely vital for student success post-graduation. We know that it's the most influential factor when employers are deciding between two otherwise equally qualified candidates. And second, just talking with one of the co-panelists up here too, the importance of paid experience during college. Paid interns do get more job offers and higher starting salaries than those who have only had unpaid internships. So we really want this experience for all of our students, and particularly first-gen students, because only 27% of first-gen students experience an internship during undergrad, compared to 40% of undergrad students overall. So this challenge is the impetus for the program, and if we could go to the next slide, we'll share a photo of the USM Job and Internship Fair, which takes place every fall and spring semester and is a wonderful opportunity for employers and students to connect. We think of this image traditionally as the way that students get internships, which sometimes they do, but it's not the full story. So in order for students to really succeed in the job market, they need two things: connections and confidence. And we know this specifically about connections because 85% of jobs are through the hidden job market. So this idea that it's who you know, a phrase that's familiar to many of us, but really hit home by that statistic in that the majority of jobs are filled informally through social networks. And this puts a lot of our first generation students at a disadvantage because a lot of them are starting from scratch in terms of building their professional networks during their time in college. So we want to be able to create that link for them through facilitated internship experiences on campus. And that second piece of confidence, there's a few parts to that, but mostly this idea of exposure. So students don't know what they don't know, and getting out into the work world is the best way to get started, to get experience under their belt, make that hands-on connection between their academics, what they're learning in the classroom, and the application and what that really looks like in the working world, and then all the associated technical and professional skills, bless you, that go along with that. So those two pieces together really do set students up for success in the work world, which we try to accomplish through internships. But one more statistic I'll share to really hit home the importance of a strong start post-college is that the first job that students have post-college has a huge influence on the next 10 years of their career. So I'm just gonna double check my statistics, thank you. We have 86% of graduates who start out in the college level career. They continue to be fully employed 10 years after graduation, and conversely, 73% of students who start out underemployed remain so. So it's really sticky both ways. If we can set students up for a good first step, we'd like to think that that keeps them on the right path for a long time. And then if students miss out and don't get a strong start, it's really, really hard to shift that. So that's where we come to the internship program. And if we could go to the next slide, please. We have the Career Exploration Internship Program. And this program has been at USM for a handful of years now, generously grant funded. And the idea is to facilitate the internship process for both our students and our employer partners. Because as we were talking with one of our table mates over there, Eleanor, the internship finding process can be really, really difficult. A lot of our employers want to work with students. A lot of our students are excited to get that experience, but making that link is challenging. And so that's where our office tries to facilitate that for both parties. Students get a whole host of professional development support through our office, both in terms of our programming and advising services. And all of that links into the program, which we can get into more depending how much time we have. And then on the employer side, we take over the recruitment, talent acquisition piece and onboarding so they can really focus on just that one-on-one interaction and mentorship with the student. So with that said, this program has really good success making that those two pieces of confidence and connections for the students. We have over 95% satisfaction from both of our students and employer participants over the last 4 years. And then post-graduation, we do keep track of these students to see how that impact plays out. And 87% of our students report that they now see meaningful job opportunities for them in Maine as a result of internship experience through the program, which is really encouraging. And then 94% of our students do report that they are sort of set up for that good first step post-graduation, whether that's in grad school, at their internship site, continuing to work full-time, or in another career, or in another job within their desired career path. So hopefully that bodes well for 10 years of success beyond that. And we'll go to the next slide here because that's where the EQUIP program comes in. So wanting to dig into that first generation population and make sure that they do have internship experience, this program of the Career Exploration Internship Program at USM was sort of a framework to be able to recruit USM students through. And then we're very lucky to partner with the Maine State Chamber to connect with employers who are particularly dedicated to that piece of mentorship for first generation students, skill building, and all the different pieces of professional skills that go into being successful in the workplace, and then that networking piece. So our employer partners take a lot of time to introduce their interns to all levels of leadership at their organizations, to have students have conversations about all the different kinds of careers that are available through their institutions. and just introduce them to all the different events that we have going on in the beautiful city of Portland, and creating those connections that students will take with them beyond graduation. So the last thing I'll highlight here is that the key feature of the program we focus on is the timing. The program runs each spring semester, with this past spring 2025 being our first. And the focus is on preparing these first generation students through that sort of in-depth connection with our partners to be really competitive in the summer internship market. So often summer internships, students in Maine are competing with a lot of students out of state and from other areas of the state. So with that kind of spring semester preparation, these students are even more prepared to go into that competitive internship market. So this past spring semester, like I say, was the first time, and we were really lucky to have the Chamber, our partners at Maine Health, and Focus Maine and LL Bean participate, each hosting a student this past spring semester. And I'll take this opportunity to turn it over to Patrick to share a little bit more about that experience this past spring.
Yes, thank you, Lindsay, and thank you to Educate Maine to be a partner in building this pipeline for first generation students. I'll just start. It is so natural to be nervous for your first day at the job. It's nervous when you're a long-term professional. It's nerve-wracking as an intern, and meeting students to where they are. I think it's really important to recognize that you build a support system. I had the privilege of being the supervisor of the intern. We met for coffee before the internship started. We talked about the location of the office, some basics to really start an experience that is one where they feel as comfortable as possible. And the beauty really is that at USM is preparing that student as they start engaging with the employer. I do want to go through how I benefited, how the Chamber benefited from it, but more broadly, I did want to state that, from this conference is such at what I see an imperative for the state's economy. The state of Maine has had demographic challenges for decades. Really, when you look at statistics in the last few years, we have had some in-migration from 2021 through 2024. Actually, the state's economy exceeded the national average for economic growth from 2021 through 2023. And we are getting to the point where, if you look at the most recent data, that's stalled out. We're sort of regressing to pre-pandemic, where births do not exceed deaths, and the only way to make that up is to create a situation where people feel inclusive. Maine has one of the lowest foreign-born populations in the United States. To be a part of the global economy, we have to be open to the globe. But moreover, I see an important aspect of this EQUIP program for students that are coming through Maine, how to make sure that we have community that meets them, that they see that Maine is a part of their future. And ultimately, the way that Maine can change is encourage people to have children and build a family here in Maine, to encourage people to move to the state, but also, and I think this is really a key aspect of the EQUIP program, is that we convert as many students in Maine to future employees. And I think that's what I try to really impress upon the employer community of the state of Maine. It really is imperative for our state's economy that we invest the effort to meet these students, to build a relationship that doesn't exist when you're a first-generation student. The statistics that Lindsay mentioned are really compelling. The ones that I really think are compelling for me is that about 40% of college students have an internship, while only 27% of first-generation students have an internship. That is the first leg to a career. And the aspect that I had, I don't think we recognize that this as employers, is it's intimidating for that first job. And that is why I think naturally, if we don't intervene, it is friends and family that becomes that supporting structure for that first job. And that doesn't exist for first generation students. So I will say, you know, in reviewing the applicants for this role, the resumes were sparse. You know, there really was limited work experience. They are trying to find wages to support them in school. There was limited professional experience, and that's what's key about providing wages with this internship experience. I gained a lot too. My intern gave me a visibility into Maine's housing crisis that I don't experience as a 40-something professional versus somebody who's coming out of college. Our intern was key on our housing initiative, watching what housing legislation was moving through the legislature. Her first day in the job, met the governor's chief of staff, walked through the Capitol, met her local representative, her state senator. And these are the experiences that really, I think, create a compelling vision of being a part of a community, and not just as a student, but seeing yourself as part of the workforce in the future. So we are so thankful for doing year 2 of this internship for first generation students through the EQUIP program. We need more employers. It's the big resource rich, I think, employers that see this, and we're gonna have to expand year after year, because there are, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of students at the community college level and at USM are these first generation students. So there's an extremely vast amount of need to meet these students where they are, to give them that support system where students, where their parents have that network to replace that support system. And that's where we see the EQUIP program being a role to lead to a new career. So thank you. That's been our experience with the Maine State Chamber, and look forward to the dialogue.
Okay, thank you both so much. So the next program that we're going to be talking about is expanding Maine apprenticeships. So I think we have another slide deck for this portion.
I'll get started while he's looking for that slide deck. As I mentioned, my name is Joan Dolan, and I'm the Director of Apprenticeship for the Maine Department of Labor. How many of you think you know what registered apprenticeship is? Put your hands up if you know and you've heard about it. And I see that whole table. I see a few people I know. I see a lot of people I've never seen before. So today I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about what is registered apprenticeship, and and then talking about some of the great things that we have going on. So currently in Maine, would it surprise you to know that we have 1,720 active apprentices? It means we have apprentices that are currently working towards their, what we refer to in apprenticeship land as a journey worker certificate. But what that means is a fully qualified worker. We have 139 sponsors, which means people that are supporting those apprentices while they go on their career journey, begin their career journey. And we're working with 464 Maine employers. Between July 1st, 2025 and June 30th of this year, we registered 871 new apprentices. So, you know, most of that, or, you know, almost half of that 1,700 active folks became active within the last year. Governor Mills has set a goal for us of, in 5 years, having 7,000 new apprentices registered in Maine. So, you know, it's okay. We're going to get there. We've got some new grants that I'll talk about in a bit. Apprenticeship can be in pretty much anything that takes at least a year to learn on the job, combined with at least 144 hours of classroom training to support what that individual is learning on the job. If you could go to the next slide, that would be really helpful. So unlike internships, I heard her say that, you know, it's good if we can get these people paid. We can't always do that. Well, registered apprenticeship is always, it's a job. You're hired from day one of your registered apprenticeship program, and you receive an incremental wage increase as your skills improve. We work in a variety of sectors in Maine. About 50% of our apprentices are in the construction sector, with the biggest occupation being electricians. We desperately need a ton of electricians in Maine, and apprenticeship is one way that folks can become electricians. We also work a lot in the healthcare sector, manufacturing, the education sector, moving folks from Ed Tech 1 or 2s to Ed Tech 3s and certified teachers, and also provisionally certified folks or emergency certified people into full certified teacher status. And then we're also focused on developing jobs within the civic sector. And jobs within the civic sector, if you think about it, think about what a town or a state government has for jobs. Pretty much everything, right? And the reason that we're focused on that, because we believe that those jobs are good jobs, right? They usually come with benefits. They usually come with vacation time and other things that people need, and decent salaries. And, you know, for a lot of people in Maine, transportation is an issue. So if I'm going and I'm going to become an electrician, but I don't really have solid transportation at the start of my journey, if I work for the town as an electrician, I don't really need to worry about it if I'm in a town that has a bus system, which that can be a challenge as well. So I already talked about what is registered apprenticeship a little bit. Additionally, it's business-led. You have to have a business that wants to hire an apprentice to have an apprenticeship program. That apprenticeship program is very structured. We have a classroom curriculum that supports an on-the-job learning curriculum. So when you have, you know, if you go to class, you go to school, you go to USM and you sit in the class, teacher has a curriculum that they're delivering to you. Well, in apprenticeship, you have that, plus you have a curriculum that's being delivered to you for your on-the-job training. So there's actually a structure to what you're going to be needing to be exposed to while you're on the job and proving competency in. Registered apprenticeship expands diversity, it bridges the barriers that sometimes exist for people entering into new jobs. And all apprentices end up with a credential of value at the end that's issued by my office and approved by the U.S. Department of Labor. It's a Journey Worker Certificate that they can take to any state in the country and find success. Next, please. Lots of benefits for employers, improves your pipeline. If I posted, and I'm going to use a Maine Health example. Maine Health is one of our individual sponsors. They were having trouble filling the role of psychiatric tech. Weren't getting a whole lot of applications for that position. What would be wrong with, why wouldn't somebody apply for that job? Not sure you're qualified, right? You know, okay, I think I'd like to work with people, but I'm not really sure. So they weren't getting enough applications to fill the open positions. So they adopted registered apprenticeship for that occupation. So it's a psychiatric tech apprentice. What does that word apprentice say to the job seeker? It says, we're willing to work with you. We're willing to support you as you grow into this role. And suddenly, Maine Health has plenty of applications for that psychiatric tech position. So that's one of the success stories that I always like to share, because I think it just tells the power of that word apprentice. Even if you don't know what registered apprenticeship is, you sort of know what an apprentice is. Geppetto had one, right? So why wouldn't we know what that was? Reduces turnover costs. Over 70% of apprentices that complete an apprenticeship program, and this is in the state of Maine, end up staying with that employer for after 1 year, and we're still gathering data to get more stats on that, and gives job visibility like I just talked about, and all kinds of good things that you can read up there. Next slide. Maine Apprenticeship Office has modest funding to offset the cost of classroom training for businesses that host registered apprentices. If you become a new sponsor, we have federal grant funds that we can provide you with a $1,500 one-time thank you for becoming a sponsor. And then when you add a new occupation, it's $1,000 for every new occupation that that employer or sponsor adds on. And then we offer for every apprentice between $500 and $2,500, depending on the length of the program, offset the cost of the classroom training. And that funding goes to whoever is paying for the classroom training. We also can connect you to all kinds of other funding sources. You can see the list of those up there. Next, please. So in order to be an apprentice, you have to be at least 16 years old. I have apprentices that are currently active in Maine, and they started between the ages of 16 and 72. Whoa, 72. Somebody was 72 and they decided, I'm going to get a job at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard and I'm going to be an apprentice. Okay, so it's really for everybody. It's for youth, it's for career changers. The average age of an apprentice in Maine is 30. What do you suppose those people were doing between the ages of 16 and 30? Hard to tell, right? Maybe they were doing something they didn't like and they said, okay, I'm taking myself a different direction, and they became an apprentice. Or maybe they were bopping around from dead-end job to dead-end job, and they finally said, man, I gotta get my stuff together. I'm gonna get a job that's gonna really lead me to a good quality of life. Typically, most employers ask for a high school diploma, though we are starting to develop programs. We have electrical apprentices in Skowhegan that are actually still in high school. They started their programs when they were 16. They're working part-time for an electrical contractor during the school year, and they're working full-time during the summer and accumulating their hours that they need to become a journey worker electrician. So it really depends on what the employer and often what the insurance company is going to allow the employer to do. And the other requirements are the same as anything for getting a job. Next slide, please. So certified pre-apprenticeship is a relatively, if you could switch the slide, please. So certified pre-apprenticeship is in statute in Maine, and we're one of the only states who actually has certified pre-apprenticeship in statute. And what that is it's preparing people for successful entry into a registered apprenticeship program. And we've had great success launching certified pre-apprenticeship. It just started, I think, in 2023 was our first certified pre-apprenticeship programs in the spring. And suddenly we have 55 certified pre-apprenticeship programs in Maine, and we've served over 1,000 people. Again, between the ages of 16 and upper limits are probably somewhere in their 40s. So a pre-apprenticeship can be paid or unpaid. It's really just to give the individual who's engaged in that a experience in the workplace and seeing if this is a good fit for me. It's also a good place for the employers to see, is this individual a good fit for my company? We talked about, next slide. So there's lots of benefits to apprentices for being engaged: wage increases, increased skills, little or no college debt, nationally recognized credential. All apprenticeship programs include workplace safety, so can create a safer workplace. All good things. And next slide, there are different types of apprenticeship programs that we have, and different types of sponsors, but a traditional apprenticeship program is a time-based program, so a program that is a certain length. So in electrical apprenticeship, you have to have 8,000 hours or 4 years of experience on the job, unless you go to a program in the community college or high school. You get a little bit of a reduction in that, but for basic purposes, it has to be 8,000 hours, and that's a licensing law, so we can't vary that. More and more, we're developing competency-based apprenticeship programs, which I like those the best. and I don't think I mentioned, but an apprenticeship has to be at least 2,000 hours or 1 year in length. But if an employer registers a competency-based program, that program can be completed in as short a time as 6 months. Because, if we all come in with different skills to an apprenticeship program, and if I already have some background, I might be able to get quickly through something and show my competency, whereas if I'm brand new to this or, whatever, it could take me longer. And so apprenticeship allows for that. And sometimes it's a hybrid program, combination of time and competency. There are single business apprenticeships like the one that we have at Maine Health or at Chinbro. There are intermediary sponsors of apprenticeship, and Educate Maine is getting a lot of shout outs here today, but Educate Maine is one of our premier intermediary sponsors in the state. They actually work with a whole bunch of different businesses and a whole bunch of different sectors, and what the intermediary does is they take care of the paperwork between the state and the apprenticeship program. So they take care of the paperwork on behalf of the employers. Why would that be important in Maine? What is Maine mostly made up for in size of employers?
Small businesses.
They're mostly small businesses. And what do small businesses not have time for? More paperwork, okay? And the apprenticeship program, we've really worked hard to streamline that process, but it's a federal program, honestly, so there is paperwork involved, but the intermediary can help alleviate that pain. USM is also an intermediary sponsor for educators. So they're signing on different school districts to deliver the special education teacher certification program through USM. Maine State Chamber could become an intermediary sponsor of apprenticeship. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities. Intermediaries can be anyone. And then there's what most people think about is the union apprenticeship program. So unions do sponsor registered apprenticeship programs in Maine as well. And then the classroom training can pretty much come from anywhere. We don't say it has to come from an in-person thing or an online thing, or it can be from anywhere as long as it's a legitimate classroom-based training program. You want to go to the next slide, please? So I mentioned that we had done a lot of developing of registered apprenticeship. After COVID, there was the American Recovery Act, or in Maine, it's called the Maine Jobs and Recovery Act funds, and Commissioner Fortman of the Department of Labor worked with the governor to give the apprenticeship program. We ended up with $12.5 million of Maine Jobs and Recovery funds, and I ended up with $12.5 million without the ability to hire a single new staff person. I said, oh my word, what am I going to do? Getting out $12.5 million with no additional staff to a program that's already pretty busy is going to be a challenge. Well, so what we did is we put out an RFA, and we ended up with 19 subrecipients of those awards. And those subrecipients have done just a fabulous job of expanding apprenticeship. So so I was really upset that I couldn't hire a staff person to do this. I had to take one of my best and say, okay, you have to focus on this $12.5 million. And she's like, okay. And she did a wonderful job of getting all that information out there. But then what the repercussions of that have been is suddenly I have 19 organizations and all the organizations that they're working with now as champions of apprenticeship. And so it's helped us to expand exponentially. And I mentioned that we had 0 pre-apprenticeship programs in 2023, and we now have 55, and we've served over 1,000 pre-apprentices, and that's because of the grant work. That's because of the work that the grantees have done. We also increased our numbers of almost doubled the number of apprentices in Maine since 2023. We just recently received 3 federal grants. So Joan was a very busy woman in the month of April, writing all 3 grants with some help from our great partners. And so we have almost $7 million worth of federal funds in various sorts. And we're going to do a few great things with that. one of the grants, the biggest grant, the $5 million grant, is going to be used to expand pre-apprenticeship programs with a focus on manufacturing and construction trades type programs. And the other half of that, another big chunk of Maine, is going to be in a contract to, we're going to issue another RFP so that individual companies or intermediaries interested in expanding pre-apprenticeship programming can apply for some grant money to do that within their organization. And then we've got Educate Maine. We're going to give them some funding to expand educator apprenticeship programs in Maine statewide. Right now we have educator apprenticeship programs in about 20 different school districts in Maine. But we'd like to at least double that number in the next couple of years. And Educate Maine is, in our opinion, the perfect entity to do that, because that's part of what they do, right? They got the Teach Maine Center, and they're trying to make all that happen. So next. So there's if you want to get more information about apprenticeship, just use that web address, mainapprenticeship@maine.gov. Pretty simple to remember. And there's an inquiry form on there that you can just put in your questions and somebody will get back to you. And then next slide. Oops. Okay. There we go. So again, that web address, if you go to that web page, you can see where all the apprenticeship programs that we have in the state are. There's an interactive map there that you can, search by county, search by occupation group, search by occupation, search by whatever you want, and you can narrow it down. And so if you're, a job seeker, this is a really good way to find either a pre-apprenticeship program or a registered apprenticeship program that might suit you. The other thing that I would encourage is to use our Career Center system. We have 7 career centers set across the state, and we also have virtual career centers, so you can go to the Maine Job Link. You just type in Maine Job Link and it'll take you right there, and you can do a live chat with somebody to talk about occupations that you might like to get into, and also search for jobs and all kinds of other things at that Maine Job Link site. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, and the last program that we're going to be providing an overview for, but certainly not least, is the Working Communities Challenge. So I'll turn it over to you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. The Lewiston Auburn Working Communities Challenge is one of WCCs across the state. I think, shout out to Corey too, Midcoast, yes. We have 6, I think, right, Corey? 6? Thank you. 6 of us. We are all over the state, northern Maine. I don't think there's anyone in southern Maine, sorry. Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to ditch Portland, but there isn't Working Communities Challenge here. The Lewiston Auburn Working Communities Challenge and others are funded through the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, and the state of Maine and other foundations in the state of Maine also pitch in, and so it's not like it's just funded through the bank, but I think the bank pulls in funding from a bunch of different partners. Our work started in the pandemic. During the pandemic, we had a bunch of organizations. We probably have 86 to 100 plus organizations involved in this work. They receive newsletter. We all work together to apply, and that's where the partnership comes in, and I'll talk about what we do in a minute. We worked together to really set a strong foundation that understood, acknowledged, and knew that Lewiston Auburn is a community that had received immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers in 2001. We have transformed that community. We have gave birth to a lot of children. I feel like, you talk about population, but I feel like We are probably the biggest producer of children in the state of Maine. Like, we have so many kids. You go to Central Maine Medical Center, St. Mary's, and every day there's so many people, mothers having children. So it's Maine Medical Center. So one of the things that we really understood is our children, first-generation immigrants, are not their parents. Our children were born here. They mostly grew up here. Therefore, they needed better opportunities for us. And so this work was coming at a time when COVID hit our communities and our country and our state. And we knew from all the media and all the data that the state of Maine was the worst state in responding to COVID for Black and brown people. Sit with that for a minute. Like, that is crazy. It was really, really hard. And what COVID did was it tangibly, like, it showed where the issues were, where the barriers were, in a way that was tangible and not talked about. And then our Lewiston Chamber President, Shanna Cox, if you know Shanna, she is so wonderful. Shanna goes to Boston and she hears about this idea and this opportunity. She brings all of us together and we all start working together. Our Lewiston WCC focuses on BIPOC youth, 18 and 30 ages, that's it. Most of our BIPOC youth in the Lewiston-Auburn are not in jobs that they need to be in. They do not have that equity. Their parents did not see it, neither did we see it, and we have a very big, a system that really is designed to put you out if you don't fight harder. And that's true for Black and brown youth, but it's also true for a lot of Lewiston-Auburn residents who have generational poverty, who have generational trauma, mental health recovery. So, I said this yesterday. I said when we came to Lewiston-Auburn in 2001, when I came to Lewiston-Auburn in 2001, it was February 4th. It was a very snowy day, never seen snow before, and we only had 3 Somali families in the Lewiston-Auburn area. So many of us built that foundation, right? We worked together to learn from, Portland and other communities that had refugees at the time. At the time, we didn't hear a lot about asylum seekers. What we knew was refugees and what's called secondary migrants, meaning you are a refugee who settled in one state and then you subsequently moved here. Somalis were coming by thousands. You see, the Somalis, we're crazy people. We don't need permission. We just move. You just no planning, and so we're just moving and moving and moving. And the system at the time in place was a system that wasn't ready for us, did not know that we were coming, did not prepare, and we had to force some things. And so for the first time, you will hear culturally and linguistically appropriate services. Nobody knew what that was. You will hear cultural brokers. I remember going to Washington State, borrowing that term and that word because we didn't know. We needed to have childcare providers, and the childcare providers were women who couldn't speak English, and therefore the term home-based childcare providers came to us. We needed to think about lead poisoning. We had no idea what that was, but a lot of our kids were sick, and they were being reported to DHHS. We had to figure what that is, and today we have a very robust lead poisoning program. We needed to understand that our kids were ELL children, right? They did not go to school prior to this. If they did, it was limited. And we didn't understand why our kids were getting a high school diploma, but when they went to college, they were not proficient in English, math, and science. We needed to understand what domestic violence is. We needed to understand sexual violence. We needed to understand jobs. We took the first person to LL Bean. That person happened to be an English speaker. And we said to that person, can you be a team leader? And therefore, that person was trained, and they trained a lot more people and a lot more people. And today, what you're seeing is thousands and thousands of immigrants working at LL Bean. Maine Medical Center We had a lot of issues. Maine Med was getting a lot of Somali women, but they didn't know how to do, this sanitary thing and this and that. And we created, and so is Central Maine Medical Center, cultural broker program where we needed to have those systems change. So you do all of this work, but our focus at the time was adults, right? We had little babies. People were giving birth. We had no idea what was to come. We were not thinking about the youth. We were thinking about if parents had jobs, if parents had the opportunity that they need, then their youth are going to follow that. What we did not know was our youth were going to get trapped in home healthcare, DPS jobs, personal care services jobs. We just did not predict that. And therefore, the Lewiston Auburn WCC is focused on that. It needs to undo that. What it needs to do is to ensure that when our kids graduate from Lewiston High School or Edward Little in Auburn, that they don't go to community college, and the community college doesn't have to set up a class in between their senior class and their actual college class. That's what's happening right now. Our kids are not competent in English, math, and science. Our kids, the best we can do for our children is for them, and no offense to community college or USM, is for them to go there, partly because we're not competing, we're not getting them into SATs. And I'm talking to you as a mother who has 8 children. I am talking to you as a mother who raised all these kids and took them to school, got them through college. What we need is these young people, like you said, we need to maintain our children in the state of Maine. Not only do we need to maintain our kids in the state of Maine, but we also need to offer them the opportunities that they deserve so that they can get to their potential. And therefore, I'll be very quick. I know I'm running out of my time, but so the Lewiston LAWCC's mission is to build a culture of opportunity for youth, especially immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, those who are facing challenges in the workforce. And we do that by 3 approaches. We want to create opportunities for growth by providing access to job resources, training, and leadership programs. So if you look at, what WCC does is, it doesn't necessarily, it's a system change program, right? We are focused on the systems. But what we do is we partner with organizations like the Immigrant Resource Center of Maine. We are the backbone organization of the initiative, or other organizations to be able to do direct services. And so in the first 6 months of job readiness and job retention and job placements and all of that, in the IRC, which is the organization that I lead, we had 364 job readiness, resume building, interviews and all of that. And 166 of those folks were placed in jobs. We work with 80-something employers. And so that's what WCC is doing. What WCC is doing is really get who's able to do what, and then do the connection and be able to do the training, the advocacy that what's needed. We also do, we transform the workforce by working with employers to create a welcoming place for everyone. So a big focus of what we do is also employers. And, we are creating what's called a Workforce Transformation Coalition. That coalition is a coalition that is going to really work with employers. And we have also developed a workplace playbook called Thrive Formula. What the Thrive Formula will do is, it'll say, Fatima, you need a job? Yeah. What are your bills? Here are my bills. And it will really look at a work-life balance through the lens of what your needs are. And the formula will ask you a set of questions, and when they ask you the set of questions and you answer those questions, the formula will tell you, here's a job that you need. You need a job that pays this amount. You need a job that is this vicinity, like, the location and how much you have to travel. You need a job that, goes from 9 to 5 p.m. It's a very unique thing that we came up with, and now the Workforce Transformation Coalition is in the initial stages of forming it. We've tried to do a design phase, that didn't work. We did a little bit of it, we did another design phase. it worked. We tried to do a summit that fell through, but then we have decided to have a small group, including employers, to really do 3 pilot sites. And those 3 pilot sites are going to be healthcare, manufacturing, and banking. And what we're banking is a place where we see a lot of our kids working there. And those 3 pilot sites are going to really pilot the Thrive formula and become a place where we lean to as we move forward with this work. And then lastly, what we do is we'll support community-driven change through education, mentorship, and collaboration with youth, community organizations, and local businesses. So our LAWCC has a structure of youth. So we have the YAC, which is Young Youth Advisory Council. We have a core team, which is sort of the advisory council for the initiative. We also have a huge stakeholder group of employers and community organizations and the community itself. The amount of focus groups and interviews and events that we do for people to understand they need to see themselves in this work. And so I think the thing that I'm trying to really bring here is the unique partnerships that LAWCC has created for us is absolutely something that I've never seen in the 24 years of doing this work. Not only that, it's led by BIPOC people. It's led by BIPOC youth. It is led by organizations that really work together through shared vision, through the lens of equity, inclusion, and diversity. We do this work because, we've heard this many times, right? Maine is aging state, Maine needs workforce, Maine needs this. We also need to show the actions too. The actions have to be also driven by the community that's affected. You're not gonna tell me how to fix my house if you don't know anything about me. And so I think the thing that we need to do is to really maintain our parents, get them the leadership that they need in the jobs that they have. We appreciate all of the businesses that have really, really understood this mother, regardless of English speaking, right, is working hard, and I'm gonna give her that opportunity. That has given our community, Lewiston-Auburn community, in a way that when you go to Lisbon Street today, Lewiston, you see how thriving that community is. You see how we have a sense of community together. We're very proud Lewistonians and Auburn people. We're very, very proud. You don't see a division. You don't see a lot of problems. Do we have problems? Absolutely. But now we see ourselves as one. We have to lean with each other. We have to work with each other. There's a lot of robust businesses. It's just all kind of things that are going on, developing projects and all kind of things. But then we have created a gap for those kids. And so the Lewiston-Auburn Community Challenge is really looking at also not only jobs, but really going to middle school, high school. What is it that you need for you to get to college? What does SAT look like? Do you start when you're in 12th grade? No, you actually start when you're in 9th grade or maybe middle school. Do you need tutoring? Do you need this? And it's really focused on individual to individual, a family to family, a system to system. Like, it's very individualized, because what we want to do is create a partnership that's authentic, that's genuine, that people see themselves in, that the community buys in, that employers feel supported. And most importantly, we need those kids to be doctors, police officers, nurses, school teachers. We've got to do that. Lewiston is really a good community that you need to live in. It's provided a lot of opportunity for us. I know Lewiston, we talk about Lewiston in a bad way, but I live in Lewiston-Auburn, and I can attest to you that Lewiston-Auburn gives people opportunities that you will never ever get anywhere. Shout out to Lewiston-Auburn. Yes!
Okay, it looks like we have about 20 minutes left or so. I have a ton of questions for this panel, but I would much prefer to get questions that are interesting to you all. So I'd love to start with questions from the audience, but as you kind of think of your question, maybe first, just quickly, if all of the panelists could just tell us how to get involved with their program really quickly. Just bottom of the page, I'm an employer, I want to sign up. How do I do that?
Thank you for asking. I think we missed our last slide, so I appreciate the prompt. So bottom line is that if you're an employer excited to work with first-generation students through USM and the EQUIP program, get in contact with Andy. If you're interested in spring 2026 and able to move relatively quickly in the next week or so, we would love to talk to you. Otherwise, reach out to us anytime and we'll talk to you about getting involved in a future cycle, so spring 2027. And in terms of the commitment with that, all of our internships are paid, so there is a financial commitment piece. And particularly for our first-gen students, we do have the extra element of a stipend, so getting students set up with their first blazer they need for their first day, gas to get there their first day of work, and sometimes those housing costs if they are needing to relocate. Oh, question. Yeah. Oh, I really appreciate you asking the question. So certainly we had our student up in Augusta, so that was a little bit of a trek for her. But we do try to facilitate transportation for folks who are further afield, and we also have the option of remote internships. So if you have a student opportunity that could be made remote, we are certainly open to working with anyone within the state of Maine. And that being said, all of our students are currently enrolled in classes, and so we do need to have folks sort of accessible from the three campuses of USM, so Lewiston, Auburn, Gorham, and Portland. Yeah, thank you.
I mentioned it during the presentation, but just apprenticeship.maine.gov. And if you're a business that would like to get engaged with us, if you click on the left side of there says business, and you go there, and there's a form that will pop right up. And same thing, if you're seeking an apprenticeship program, I encourage going to that map that's also on that website, along with some testimonial videos and all kinds of other good information right on that apprenticeship.maine.gov.
I'll just add that if you're a decision maker to sign up, talk to Andy today. If you are somebody who can speak to a decision maker and they're skeptical, have them talk to me. I supervised an EQUIP student. It was a great experience, but would love to explain from an employer standpoint how it worked for the Maine State Chamber.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at LAWCC. Additionally, I've got some scanning and materials here. And if you are an employer, come to us. If you need to do the Thrive Formula Workplace pilot site, come to us. If you are in the Lewiston Auburn area or beyond, Midcoast also, work with us, because I think there's a lot of good stuff that we bring to the table.
Okay, do folks have questions for these wonderful panelists? I'll come to you. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much. I work for an organization that does workforce development with the MCC, the Women's Center, the Reentry Center, and I've been wanting to add apprenticeships to part of the conversation about next steps, and I was wondering if you could speak to the organizations that you partner with, how open they are to working with justice-involved people.
It really varies from business to business, but we have many that are very interested in working with justice-involved people, and we do have programs within the Maine State Prison that are actually apprenticeship programs at the Mountain View Center primarily, and we also have pre-apprenticeships at the Women's Center in construction that have worked pretty well. So I think, like Bath Iron Works is a little bit, it's hard to get an apprenticeship there, I think, because it's a federal defense contractor, and but others are very open to working with folks that are formerly incarcerated.
Other questions from folks? Okay. Well, a question for you all. So all of these different programs involve kind of stakeholders getting together to develop the program. There are a lot of partnerships. And I'm just kind of curious, just a sort of nuts and bolts question. What are some lessons learned with working with these kind of different stakeholders to run these programs? Like Joan, you said that you had millions of dollars to distribute, and now you have to work with kind of sub-agencies on distributing. Like, I'm just kind of interested on like thinking through these partnerships, and for folks who may be thinking about similar programs, just kind of building something like that. And I don't know who would like to start.
I can go first. I think we had, like, we always say we've got some key insights about equitable workforce partnerships that we've learned over the last 3 years. I should mention that WCC is in its 4th year. We did get an extended year of funding for all of us that will end next July or June. And so one thing that we've learned is to really let the client lead the process, the individual who's looking for the job. I think it's important for us to have things within your organization that really supports them in that case. I mean, you talked about, formerly incarcerated, that's a whole different population. And so we have to be really engaged to meet the individual and the community where they are, not the other way around. Another thing is to really address the whole person. I think when we talk about the population that we're working with here, it is a youth that has one leg in this culture and another leg in the other culture, and it's often very confusing. We lack identity because we get confused. I came to this country when I was very young with no parents myself, and so I can relate to that. When you get displaced from war-torn countries, it's just too much of you to do that. I'll go very quickly. The other thing that we also have learned is really making sure that you invest in youth leadership for long-term workforce strength. That's super, super important. It's also important to have cross-sector collaboration that creates more opportunities. And that one of the things that we do is we look at what sectors are we missing and we bring them to the table. Who are we missing all the time? Cultural competence is non-negotiable. I think we talk about cultural competence, cultural consideration. You want someone to work for you, that agency has to provide a cultural lens that, centers everyone. I'm Muslim, we pray 5 times a day. If I go and watch for prayers and wipe the bathroom, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't need permission for that. So people need to understand I pray 5 times a day. If you ask me questions about it, I'll tell you, but I don't need your permission for me to go and pray. And so employers have to understand that. And I know I'm talking strongly here, but employer engagement must be ongoing. Employers have to engage. Employers have to understand that they need the employers too, that they need the workforce, that people are changing. We are getting older. We do not have a lot of kids. We need to attract, people from other countries. We need to open that globe. We need to embrace diversity. I'm not telling you as an employer, cut corners, no, but you also have to understand if you have almost 15,000, if not more, immigrants in the Lewiston urban area, and most of them are children, and maybe a small portion is working in the workforce, there's a problem there. There's a problem there. So how do we transform that lens and say, I need 5 employees who are going to have this many skills, and I'll give you 6 months to come up with them. We can do that. We can't have employers here and then communities here. That bridge has to be crossed. Whether you like it or not, we're glued together. This is our community. This is our state. We need to open up to that. Sorry, that was strong.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to share building collaborations?
So I think from the apprenticeship standpoint, once you reach out to us, you're assigned what we call an ATR, apprenticeship technical rep, and that person knows everything there is to know about apprenticeship, and they work closely with you in developing the program. And our biggest thing in the apprenticeship program is meet the employers where they're at, listen to what the employer needs, work with the employer to document exactly what they need and how they want their individuals trained. And then that ATR stays in touch with that company once they become a sponsor. And they send a monthly newsletter. The sponsor can always reach out to that ATR and ask questions, and they can get support for that. So I think that constant communication thing is really important. And I think we do a pretty good job of it. So I got to keep them happy.
Thank you. So with this sort of three-way partnership with the Chamber and Educate Maine and USM, I think we've been really lucky to each figure out pieces of the bridge that we could be for that gap between students and employers. And then the sort of second goal for us this year has been to work with employer partners who have interns really get out and about in the community and represent the program themselves, because there's no one better than the students themselves to talk about the impact of the program. And through these 4 internships particularly, they were able to network with hugely diverse groups of employers throughout the state and talk about the value of the program that way. And so I think our hope is for some sort of organic growth from that networking.
Oh, we've got questions. I'll go here and then there.
So we're all really good at converting the converted, but how do we convert the non-converted? So some of the work that we're doing, we're really asking ourselves, how are we telling this story so that we can apply for future funding or, find sponsors for this work? What practices or things have you done to market the success of these programs to try to reach those people that you're not currently reaching?
So we use some of the grant money to launch a pretty comprehensive marketing campaign, and hopefully you've heard it on the radio or seen it on the television, or you're getting, trying to keep that constant contact through social media. So I think that's what we're doing. And the other thing that I forgot to mention is with our grantees, we host quarterly communities of practice where we're sharing best practices. Last spring, not this past spring, the spring before that, we held a big one-day apprenticeship summit where everybody was invited and, shared our best practices and talked to people about how to get involved.
Thank you. So 2 pieces to that too, very similarly for us. I think the first is having those conversations with employers about how I think one of the facilitators earlier talked about how inclusive practices are best practices, and absolutely, employers do financially invest in this program and in these individual students, but from that, they get a diverse perspective from a young person, from someone who is first generation, to talk about how to make that workplace environment better, how to make their bottom line. What am I trying to say? Just a diverse perspective and a new kind of fresh voice to ask questions that maybe haven't been asked before. So I think that's a big piece of it, that it is investing in the student, but it's also a big impact for the employer themselves. And then hopefully going forward, if we're able to continue this, it becomes really a talent recruitment pathway for those employers. And so if we're able to take over a lot of that recruitment and talent acquisition piece and funnel them really good candidates, and then they invest in the training, then they have a really reliable way to get new grads into their organization. And then the social media piece is important for us too. I was just taking the opportunity to follow the WCC on Instagram, and the Career and Employment Hub does try to be pretty active on Instagram as well. That's where we share a lot of our student stories and successes from the internship program. So follow us there too, and encourage your employer partners to do the same.
You did hear my, I think, a macro imperative for the state's economy, but more for the employers that may not be participating on. This is where your future workforce is. This is where your future customers are. And I do think that there's a bit of a wake up for businesses that demographics are going to be changing. You have to start creating a more inclusive workforce. You have to start creating a more accommodating workplace. Start with an internship. Start with learning, and I think we learned a lot from our intern of just, one example that we had, I had never thought about kind of informing someone how to navigate a snowstorm. So the intern came up from Portland. A snowstorm happened. They announced closure. the intern stayed until 10 o'clock in the office to wait till the snowstorm subsided. And I never thought of doing that education. It was a painful education for me. I felt terrible the next day. But learning about that, this is a new experience for a workplace of commuting, of experiencing Maine, and there will be a little bit more outreach for that first intern of the snow's coming, and it's time to prioritize your safety. But that was sort of just intuitive for a lot of the employees, but making sure that it is not intuitive for those first generation students in a lot of places.
Corey, you give me a good idea. I think your question maybe is also who is doing workforce in the entire state and how can we coordinate ourselves so that we're not in silos. So ideas to think more about. Next time we meet each other, we'll talk more about that. Yes. For us, what we do is really, and this thing of let's meet where the employer is, I think that's a very good thing, and we've been doing that for a very long time. But I think our talking point is we are going to see this as a mutual gain, right? Someone gets employment, employer gets employees who are competent. I think we gain both ways. And so what we've been doing is with the WCC convening, like who will think about convening caregivers when it comes to workforce? Like we convened, teachers, parents to say, what is it that you're looking for? We do a lot of different convenings because what we want to do is get to also the community itself. They need to see themselves in engaging in these various different conversations. So that's one way of doing that. Another way of doing that is our newsletter. And then we're very notorious for keeping databases of who the employers are and who the key players are. And when we are looking at our ecosystem and our map, we're saying, who are we missing? And we go after those people. So for instance, we know that the grant, this WCC grant is ending next year. And so we needed to bring in key players into our work and ecosystem for the work to continue and to build that bridge early on so that with our funding, this work is able to stick on its own. And so we brought in like a bank. We didn't have a bank on the core team, which is sort of the advisory council for the project. We brought in another key player of Maine Department of Labor and state partners. And the idea is to really take the work from grant funding lens to systemic changes that are sustainable. And I think we'll continue to look at who are the key players, who are the stakeholders that we're missing, and we'll keep building on that. But that's a very good question.
All right, everyone. I think that is it for the time that we have here. I just want to say thank you to the panelists for doing such a tremendous job sharing these programs. Thank you to all of you for joining us this morning, and thank you to Hamza and all of the organizers for this really, really important event. So thank you all, and yeah, we'll hang out for a few minutes. So if you have any questions or want to get connected, please come by. Thank you.